the big thing for me is putting my boundaries in place. So, and this is something I've had to learn, because I think when you're new into a role or new onto a new program, whatever, you have a tendency to say yes, just to near enough anything and everything. And you can very much end up being spread far too thin. And like you said, almost burning out. So I think firstly, it's important to set your boundaries.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode on the Growth Blog podcast. And today I have my friend, Eleanor, joining us, and she will be talking to us around her career and her transitions and some other interesting stuff we'll get to talk about. So expect this one to be playful because she's my friend. I work like every day with her. Last year, we were in front of each other literally every day, every other weekday. So over to you, Eleanor. Who are you? Tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much, Wilson. Yeah, I must say this is a strange scenario for us to be in. Normally, we are just sat opposite each other at work. So to be on screen and having a conversation is fantastic. But yes, I am Eleanor Pandya, and I have had the pleasure of working with Wilson for the last year or so in his system development space. But actually what I do is I am a lead transformational change analyst also at Shell. So we have partnered together on a program, but I'm not just on one program. I get the opportunity to work on lots of different projects within the IT space as well. So been at Shell for about 4 years now. Still very much at the early stages of my career, but very excited for what the future could hold.
Wonderful. Transformational change. Let's dive right into it. I'm sure some people will be asking, what is that? What do you do? So yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, I'll give it my best go. The transformational change can mean lots of different things. So for some people who are maybe familiar with project management or program management, they may have encountered change professionals, change managers before. But what we are doing, the transformational change practice at Shell, is we are sitting in key IT projects and programs to really help deliver and drive business adoption and value of those programs. So if you think about it, a lot of projects involve some form of a change, and it's how do you take people on that journey? How do you, and from both a people, process and technology perspective. So Wilson knows me best for my communication side of that role, but really it's kind of going in from the outset. It's helping with the likes of change impact assessments and understanding how is that change going to impact people from that people, process and technology standpoint. It's then putting mitigations in place or an action plan in place, and that is typically through communications or through training. And then from that we build out our communications planning and design and delivery, and then similarly with training as well. And often there's other artifacts that have to be created. There's certainly other elements that come into our role, and then it's the handing back off to business as usual once the project or program is complete, and ensuring that the most value possible has been delivered, and that really helps us to showcase our impact on the project as well. So what do I personally do? Yeah, I tend to sit in a communications or a stakeholder management role at the moment, and that is where, like I said, Wilson knows me best from. I tend to write a lot of internal communications through our internal platforms. Sometimes that's through articles, posts, videos as well, so maybe creating success stories to showcase people's fantastic work and to help bring other people on with the journey. But also that's sometimes working externally, and Wilson and I have both been to some external conferences together and talking about the Shell digitalization journey there and how our respective projects are contributing to supporting the energy transition and the transition of our company. And then also maybe partnering with specific other companies to showcase how we are partnering together with certain platforms or initiatives as well. So we have the likes of Microsoft or the Project Management Institute that we have worked with them previously. So trying to explain my role is quite hard often at times, because Wilson's like, she does everything, it's fine. But
Yeah.
there is method to the madness.
Okay, I like what you said. There's method to the madness, because I don't really get it. I just know Eleanor needs to get this done. She gets it done. So, what skills are required to do what you do? Maybe let's start from there. If
Yeah,
someone
that's
wants to become a transformational change analyst or get into the space, what kind of skill do they require?
it's a really good question, because I think maybe it's a good point for me to mention that, my background, at university, I did economics and politics. So two quite theoretical degrees, traditional subjects. And I think I kind of sat back and thought, okay, well, what do I want to do? Because from, at university, you learn a lot of transferable skills that can be then applied to the workplace in lots of different roles. So I, did my master's degree in economics and politics. Then I went and joined at the FDM group on their project management and business analysis program, where I underwent training for about 9-10 weeks before joining Shell. And what were the skills that I came in with? Well, business analysis skills, project management skills, communication skills, and some kind of advanced Microsoft Office skills as well. But what does someone need to really do transformational change? I think at a very high level, you need to be good at problem solving. If someone's going to potentially give you a task at any minute of any day, and you need to be able to think quite quickly on your feet to come up with a methodical approach to how that problem could be solved. You also need to have, I think, a bit of a passion for technology. We sit in the information and digital technology space. So you need to be thinking about how, you can leverage different pieces of technology to help with that problem solving. And you need to be quite creative as well. So, I said that I work in communications. So the different communications that I develop, I need to bring that creative element too, because different people obviously need to be communicated with in different ways. I hear about, when it comes to learning as well, you have your auditory learners, you have your visual learners, you have your kinesthetic learners. That needs to come into how I do my job and how I design different artifacts or deliverables to suit different personas in both kind of a communications and a training standpoint. Communications effectiveness, I reckon, is another thing to mention. Like, you need to be able to communicate effectively, and like I say, that's because you need to consider how different people need to be communicated to and with. And I do just think you need to have a good level of confidence in yourself as well. Like, know your abilities, trust in your abilities, and don't be afraid to kind of hold your hand up and say, oh, I don't think I actually know the answer to this, but don't worry, I know someone who might be able to help me. So it's, also not being afraid, to speak up when maybe you don't know the answer, and be honest, but then go and leverage your network to help solve that problem as well. So I think there's probably a couple of key skills there. And maybe just finally, I'd mention kind of stakeholder management as well. So you could be working with lots of different types of people, some very senior VPs or general managers, right down to kind of analysts and some of my peers as well. So knowing how to communicate with different people based on their role, but then also how they might be impacted by that change that they're getting affected by as well. Is it kind of a low level impact for them, therefore they might not need to be communicated with as frequently, or in such maybe a one-to-one setting, where someone that is going to be directly impacted and might have some concerns that they want to be heard, you're going to manage them a little bit differently. So I think having empathy, having that understanding that different people are going to react in different ways, and therefore bringing that into kind of your stakeholder analysis and management as well, is probably a key skill. So there's a couple for you there, Wilson.
Thank you for the lecture. I'm sure someone will learn a lot. Like you mentioned so many skills. I know I have to rewatch this to get every one of them. But I like the fact around communication, confidence, empathy. I think those are stakeholder management as well. Like you mentioned, you studied politics and economics, and then
Mhm.
you had to transition to this to transformational change. Was that an intentional transitioning, or it was you just wanted to do something different? Because for different people, there are different reasons.
Mhm.
What was your reason for transitioning from that space into what you currently do now?
So I think there's multiple kind of parts to how I'm going to answer that question. I think firstly, my older brother, he also studied economics at university, but he always knew he wanted to do economics, and then he wanted to effectively, become a trader, in some way, shape,
Yeah.
or form, and that made sense. I studied economics and politics because they interested me, and I, wanted to dive deeper into the subjects, but I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do with them. I had the privilege of being able to do a couple of different internships and work experience in the likes of IBM. And I really liked the corporate setting. I like that idea of being given a problem and then having to solve it using technology and using that sort of creative element as well. I was also the marketing director of a charity while I was at university. And I really enjoyed that work as well, building a website and creating content, delivering a content calendar, and, using and working with different pieces of, different social media platforms. And so there was all these different things that I got exposure to that I was like, okay, so probably the corporate setting and a business role would suit me quite well. But I haven't done business, I haven't studied business, but I have been exposed to it through that director role, through, internships. And then I'd also worked as kind of in the more administrative side of Nuffield Health as well for a couple of summers over my university period. So I therefore saw the program with FDM as a fantastic way of gaining some of those transferable skills that would bridge that gap between university and then going into the workplace as well. It wasn't an easy time as well. I think I graduated in the summer of 2019. None of us knew what was coming in that February, March of 2020.
Yeah.
It obviously changed the world and the way that we work for a while. And so I think it's, I'll mention that my role with Shell didn't actually start until March of 2020. So that was quite a long period when I did my training with FDM. I started in the September. And there was a lot of uncertainty around that period as well as to, how roles were going to look.
Yep.
Lots of roles were changing, and going into a company as a contractor as well. We all know that there was cost cutting going on as well, and that only increased, going into the pandemic. So, in answer to your question, circling back, I'm not trying to give any lectures here. I think that I got into my role at Shell really because of FDM and the the skills that they enabled me to develop over that 9-10 weeks of intense training and then the period thereafter. But then I think it was also the fact that I'd done that marketing role with the Liverpool Foundation, the charity that I'm still a non-exec director for now, because I think that sort of developing communications and of different types of communications as well could be seen as part of obviously that wider transformational change role as well. Obviously communications is just one element of that, but it was something that I had a passion for. I knew I could go in and only develop further, and I was very lucky that Shell saw that opportunity with me and brought me into that space of which I then continued on from.
Oh, good. Yeah, so COVID contributed to it. Your love for what you do contributed to it, and
Yeah.
just piecing all of this together helped you transition. And you mentioned being in a program that helps you develop the skill, because sometimes when people want to transition, they tend to do it on their own, which is not bad. But the program you were in, how would you say that enabled your transition? Do you think without the program you would have done it quicker, or what were the benefits for you?
You mean the program with FDM, or do you mean programs?
FDM, like with FDM and probably other like when you were with the charity stuff you do, right? That you were building the skills as well, but having that structured program where people tend to then say, this is a curriculum, these are the skills you need to pick up, this is how you pick that up. How effective is that during a transition?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because that structure was fantastic. You know, you had every week you were learning a different skill, you were exposed to different people that were coming in to train you, different groups that you're working in, which is exactly how I imagined, and it has turned out to be, that the work would be like. You would continuously be meeting and working with lots of different types of people. But exactly that, it provided a very structured curriculum to really enhance those skills. But I think it's also important to remember that learning doesn't just stop there. We learn almost every minute of every day, you know, just through wandering around, through interacting with different people, the conversations that we have. And I think it's therefore taking the opportunity to go one step further. You know, there are the likes of LinkedIn Learning, you know, so having that curiosity and that learner mindset to say, okay, well, I'm being given X to do, but but as is, you know, myself and 10 other people. So what's going to differentiate me from those 10 other people? How can I go one step further to showcase that my interest and also my drive to be the best that I can be, and to continuously learn and develop as well. Taking our own development into our hands is just as important, because, you know, you shouldn't just sit around and wait for someone to tell you what to do. That's not how it works anymore. It's not like you're at school anymore and you're being told what to do every day. We're now at the point where it's up to you. It's up to you how far you're going to go in life and in your career, you know, fully, and you then just need to take responsibility for that. And so I think it was the structured program, but then also some of the learning and conversations that I had outside of that, whether that was through family, friends, colleagues, but making that differentiator. And I think that, you know, you understand this as well, is key to helping you to stand out from the crowd.
Okay. Good. Recently, I posted an article on the learning model, the 70-20-10, right? On the job, from your social interactions, and then formal training. And truthfully, we can't just get it. Most times, you actually learn it when you do it, right? So, though the program enabled you to have a curriculum, but you have to look for a way to use that skill. If not, it won't become a skill at the end of the day, and it will make it difficult to actually transition.
Exactly. And I think, you know, coming into the transformational change practice as well, they were developing a curriculum that was based on each of the job grades. So you knew what was required and kind of mandatory within your job role. But then there was also lots and lots of optional courses as well, which you could take time to work your way through to help further enhance your understanding of different skills as well. And like you said, you know, 70% on the job, that therefore then helped you within your role to then put the application in place. And I'm very much someone that learns by doing mainly. So by having the theory, it was fantastic to then kind of go and sit in my role. And I've, you know, worked on different programs now to then see how that application looks, and that looks in practice. And I do think that in my kind of last program that I worked in, so in the system development space, you know, at times I was very stretched. It was, you know, here's a problem. We're not going to let you sink in any way, but we're going to help you to swim, and we're going to empower you to try and solve the issue, or, you know, develop the deliverable of whatever it was by yourself. but then, and it gives you that ownership. And I think that gives you even more accomplishment once you hand it over, because you know that you have learnt while delivering as well. And I think, the two very much go hand in hand.
Yeah. Oh, good. So right now, I'm trying to keep a straight face because normally we just talk this across the table, but it's fine. But thank you so much for just sharing your perspective on the skills and the learning and all of that. Now, something that is very dear to you is exercising, right? And I
Yes.
decided to bring that in, yes.
Okay.
Because when you go into a new role, you're expected to perform, you're expected to deliver. And people sometimes struggle with work-life balance due to that pressure of being in a new space, right? Sometimes they stretch themselves way too much, and maybe it gets to backfire or something because they will be burnt out. So how do you keep that balance when you are in a new space so that you keep developing, you keep performing, but yet you're sane, you're healthy, and you come out every day your best self to deliver? How do you bring all of that together?
What a fantastic question. And definitely something that I know you and I have both reflected on a lot, I think, over the last, little while. So I think the big thing for me is putting my boundaries in place. So, and this is something I've had to learn, because I think when you're brand new in a role or at a certain company, you have a tendency to say yes, just to near enough anything and everything. And you can very much end up being spread far too thin. And like you said, almost burning out. So I think firstly, it's important to set your boundaries. My typical working hours are, 8 till 5 or 9 till 6 or whatever. I like to have, maybe half an hour for lunch or an hour at lunch, and make sure that that's very clearly set in your diary and your kind of key stakeholders are aware of that. I've always made a joke that I will work any hour of the day, providing you allow me time to go to the gym. And Wilson knows this. As long as I can get to the gym, because for me, the gym is a fantastic way of me resetting, whether that is to kick off the day. More often than not, I prefer to try and hit it in the middle of the day, just to kind of reset and re-energize for the afternoon. Or sometimes, if it's been a particularly, long day, or maybe there's some personal things that I'm trying to process as well, I like to go at the end of the day, because I like to just kind of use that as a way of kind of organizing my thoughts, getting the endorphins going, and then, coming home and resting thereafter. So for me, exercise is a big thing, and not just the gym. So it's also, maybe going for a run outside and making sure that I get plenty of fresh air. And something that I have very much introduced, especially for the last year or 18 months, is I typically go into the office near enough every day. And that is because I am lucky enough to live about a 20-25 minute walk from work. So that's a big part of my day as well. That is, I get 25 minutes of fresh air in the morning and in the evening as a way of kind of getting ready for work and then decompressing at the end of the day as well. So I think those are kind of a couple of things for me on the exercise front and the trying to avoid burnout. But I think something that's fantastic at Shell is, there's a great emphasis put on our psychological safety as well, and having safe spaces to talk about how we might be feeling with a variety of issues. And that could be both from sitting in our project within our project teams, but then also with your line manager, or for me, where it's kind of more of a consultancy based role, with other transformational change consultants as well. So I think it's also voicing, any problems or concerns that you might have, and that problem solving element coming in as to, okay, well, how can we perhaps make sure that tomorrow is a better day for whatever reason that may be. So I do think that being honest and having the space to talk openly is also something that's important to also help avoid that burnout piece as well. And probably just finally, it's prioritization. So, if you're going to have that open conversation, it's then sitting down with your lead and then saying, well, there's only X number of hours in the day. I'm happy to work, a little bit more than that. But, perhaps if the ask is too big. Okay, how can we prioritize, what I've got on my plate at the moment? And that way as well, you're not trying to burn the candle at both ends. There's not me in the gym at 7 a.m. and then, still working till 11 p.m. That just doesn't work. It works on the odd occasion. And I think you need to know that you can do that if you need to, but that should not be the norm. That should be the exception, should that be required for whatever reason that may be. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
No, it does. Not just a little bit. Thank you for sharing your perspective. It's always important for me, whatever it is, try to make out time, make sure you have that good balance. I know for different people, work-life balance differs, right? But on a more general note, you should always make out time to sleep, work, and just do something different, something fun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have a book that sits at the side of my desk, at the side of my bed, and that's something that I try and do before I go off to sleep. I put away my laptop, my phone, my iPad, and it's okay. I'm now gonna do a Sudoku or a couple of Sudoku puzzles, or maybe read 10 pages of my book to try and then just get your body resting, ready for going to sleep, because we know all the different studies that show it takes you longer to go to sleep the longer you're looking at a screen in that blue light into the evening.
Oh, good. Recently, I started writing more around productivity, and that's something I have personally started doing because by the time you're looking at the blue light from your phone, trust me, it does a lot to your brain. So always find time to just turn it off. At this particular time of the day, I'm not looking at my screen anymore. I'm going to sleep or do something less, screen-like, let's put it that way.
Stimulating for your brain.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so just before we go towards the end, let's talk collaboration while transitioning. Right, I'm very keen on collaboration because I feel, for me, it tends to bring out the best in me. I remember when I joined the team, one thing I wasn't great at was coming up with those communication materials, that was use of space. And it's just the ability to leverage other people's strength, right? And then yours, and that makes a great team. What is your experience, and how much has collaboration within your space? Because as a consultant, you need to come into a space, you need to understand that space before you do what you do. How has collaboration helped you, I'll say, in that transition phase and in doing what you do? How does it play within your space for you?
Yeah, but I think firstly, collaboration is key. I can't do my job without collaborating and communicating with others. So I can't produce a communication for a certain end user. I can't help to develop training for a certain persona without collaborating with a team that know what it is that needs to be delivered or communicated further on. So perhaps that is speaking to project managers, perhaps that's speaking to SMEs, subject matter experts. Collaboration is key. So I think it's very important to have collaboration in order to be productive and efficient in delivering our roles. We've said it before, you and I often used to sit opposite each other, and we very much played to each other's strengths. If there was a question that came in or someone approached, one of the two of us regarding something maybe that was a little bit more technical, I'd always be like, Wilson, and I would pass them over to you. Whereas if there was something that needed delivering, I don't know, say on Viva Engage, on our internal, communications platform, you would say, Eleanor will help you, and you'd pass them over to me. Also knowing your team, like you say, playing to everyone's strengths, and knowing who's an expert or a specialist in what, and then bringing those skills together, establishing strong ways of working to then divide out the roles and responsibilities of the task in hand to leverage everyone's skill set to the best of its ability, and will enable you to deliver faster and probably something of much higher value as well. And some may say that that's quite a complex way of looking at things, I would disagree. I would actually say that's a simplified way, really, of looking at things. And that is very much something that we are focusing on at the moment, in Shell, with our drive for performance, for discipline, and for simplification as well. So I think that playing to everyone's strengths and collaboration enables us to deliver much higher value, much faster.
Okay, thank you for sharing your perspectives on that. We're at the end now. How can people reach you? Is there any project you're working on you want people to know about you? What else do you want them to know about Eleanor?
Well, it's been lovely having this chat, Wilson, and a little bit the usual coffees that we would have. But absolutely, people can reach me on LinkedIn, as that's probably the best way of getting in contact with me. Or if you are a fellow Shell colleague, obviously, please do reach out internally through our various platforms as well. What am I working on at the moment? So I think most people know me for my work in the system development space over the last kind of 3 years at Shell. But at the beginning of the year, I actually transitioned into a new role, sitting in still in the kind of the digital space, but in upstream, and that is working within our asset digital core program, and that is an SAP S4 HANA rollout to help drive performance with our assets. And so that's in the likes of asset management, in finance, contracts and procurement, and managed supply chains, and projects and wells as well. So it's a very big program. It's going to run for a long time. It's something new for me. I haven't worked on an SAP program before, but I'm really excited to be working with a fantastic team. It's a bigger transformational change team for me as well. And all the collaboration and the different networks that I will be able to tap into.
Okay, thank you, and we'll be looking out for for more on that, I guess, as you go. So if you want to catch her on LinkedIn, you can just reach out, and when she's free, she'll reach out to you. So thank you so much, Eleanor, for making our time for this. We truly appreciate your presence in the podcast, and thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.